Hello and welcome back to Not Even Mad, the show where we go into effect next month, possibly Labor Day, but in Vietnam already, though in secret. Today we speak of, well, that was a nerdy tariff reference, but a more meaty serving of ice to cool you down on a hot summer day. And we do so as we uphold our reputation for refutation we vow to be not even mad. I say we, I often say we. Who are we? Well, joining me now is a columnist for the Boston Globe, Carine Hajjar. Hello, Carine.
Hey there.
And we also have Jeff Maurer, who is the proprietor of the I Might Be Wrong Substack. Jeff, if you had to do it again, would you rename it?
No, it's served me pretty well because I'm wrong a lot. So it's truth in advertising, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking of going the other way, but you could just go with I was wrong. I, in fact, was wrong.
I didn't consider I'm kind of ungoogleable because it's named after a Radiohead song. But of course, when you Google it, the Radiohead song comes up. I didn't think of that angle. So yeah. There's room for improvement, I suppose.
Carine, OK Computer's out there as a possible Substack title. But if you had to rename the Boston Globe, what would you go with?
Oh, dear. If I brainstorm on this, I will get in very big trouble. So, that's the hometown paper.
That's it. They're the hub. So I will now quote Jonathan V. Last. He was writing in The Bulwark, and he said, the Trump administration realized that corrupting the FBI would be a tall order. I don't know. I've been paying attention. So while they're certainly trying to do that, they put most of their chips on a different number, reinventing ICE as the primary instrument of internal state power. Harvard political scientist Theda Skocpol wrote, immigration is an area where a U.S. president can exercise virtually unchecked legal coercive power, especially if backed by a Supreme Court majority and corrupted by the Department of Justice. Now Congress has given ICE unprecedented resources. I actually didn't think of this when I was thinking of all the bad things about the big, beautiful bill. And yet, on the other hand, if we are going to have illegal enforcement of immigration, which a lot of people don't want, but the public generally does, we have to have someone to do the enforcement. Now, Carine, I've been reading a lot of your writings about the excesses of ICE within your state. The Lopez case has gotten a lot of attention. But where do you stand on how ICE has been used, and are you worried about overweening state power with this new round of funding?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to consider, if anyone's ever had the misfortune of reading through the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, it does give the state a lot of power on immigration. And this came up a lot when we were talking about deporting student activists like Mahmoud Khalil. If you look in the INA, there is a provision that says, well, if the Secretary of State thinks this person is a threat to national security or whatever the term was, they can be deported. So it's pretty tricky because a lot of what is going on is deeply upsetting, but and it's being branded as illegal in a lot of cases. It's a little more complicated than that. A lot of what is being done is legal, but this gets to the deep question of, should we do everything that we have the power to do? I think that the consensus, Americans are growing increasingly squeamish with how deportations are going along, but at the same time, there's pretty much a consensus, and this should be like a clear message for the Trump administration, that there's consensus on deporting criminal migrants. The greater deportations when it comes to collateral, what they call collateral, like you're out on a mission looking for some guy accused of whatever.
Just happen to stumble across a migrant type enforcement.
This makes people more squeamish. And frankly, I just don't think it's a political winner for the admin. And they've already walked back in certain areas like farm workers, for example. So I think in the end, they have to decide, do we want to do everything we actually can do, or should we just focus on what Americans actually want us to do?
Yeah. So, Jeff, I know you believe in open borders of the soul, but is this one of those situations where you write about that Americans sort of being nice people, but babies essentially would like the result, but don't want the effort to get there?
I don't think that's how I'd put it. I think Carine, touched on the true and obvious thing that most people want, which is that if you're going to have immigration laws, they need to be enforced somehow. but sensibly and humanely. There are a lot of laws that are on the books and could be enforced in a draconian and ridiculous way, but we wouldn't want that. I mean, nobody wants to get the electric chair for jaywalking, that type of thing. So, yeah, I think most Americans are somewhere in the middle there. There does need to be some enforcement, but yeah, I think when you start to hear about like ICE agents going after people in Home Depot parking lots, it's like those guys in the Home Depot parking lot, in my opinion, are not a problem. They are, in fact, quite helpful if you need to move something large, and
especially
I think
for less than minimum wage.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. Well, there's a labor issue, labor law issue that's kind of a different issue, but they're not hurting anybody. And illegal immigration is weird. I personally think of it as it's like immigration laws exist and they do need to be enforced. But I also think like I would break them if I were in those guys' shoes. So it's always hard for me to get very mad when it's like, I see why you did that. It's like I respect the get up and go. I have I have more of an issue with the people who stayed in, wherever they're from if things aren't going well and didn't have the initiative to swim across a river or hop a fence. That's what I would have done. So it's complex feelings when I look at those people.
Yeah, and I understand the inclination to say, well, we want some immigration enforcement, but we don't want to go too far. But the argument is, it's pretty compelling, is that the Trump administration does want to go too far. They don't see too far as too far. It's the famous phrasing of Adam Serwer in The Atlantic, the cruelty is the point. I would be a little more subtle than that. I think most people who subscribe to that just think Stephen Miller, he's a horrible person, and Donald Trump is a horrible person, and they just have enmity and evil in their souls or something like that. I would say there is a bit of strategy to it, which is if you advertise that we are not open for business among immigrants, you're going to get the effect of disincentivizing immigrants to reach the border or to cross the border. And Jeff, that's exactly where I think most Americans are. They don't want a country overrun by people who shouldn't be here, but they want the enforcement to be not among the people who have put down any roots. And I don't know how possible that is. I think very robust border enforcement is something that most people do agree with. And I think certainly all the polling shows that when you're talking about picking up illegal people who are here, who have criminally broken the law, people with arrest records, that's something the public agrees with. I don't know how much of a dent you can make because, Carine, you were just reporting in one of your articles that in Massachusetts, ICE has made about 1,500 arrests and half of them have no criminal record.
Yeah, just about. I mean, but your point on deterrence is a good one, I think. So I went to the border in 2022 during the early days of what you would call the Biden border crisis. And it really was this sense of you kept having top officials saying, well, you can't come here, you can't cross the border, and then basically rolling out the red carpet procedurally for people to do so. And they got the message loud and clear that you're just going to get a court date and you will be released, which is for the most part exactly what was happening. So I do think that there is something to enforcing these rules more strictly at the get-go to send a clear message. I understand that logic. The question is just how far do you go with that? Border apprehensions and border encounters went starkly down when Trump was elected. I'm pretty sure even before he went into office, but certainly now, border encounters are so low. So people are getting the message. One other thing about just, the overall messaging is it's really interesting because a lot of people are self-deporting right now. Art Arthur at the Center for Immigration Studies wrote a whole report on this, but the Trump administration's program to get people to just self-deport and leave on their own is actually working. So I think that's just an interesting part of the whole deterrence conversation.
Yeah, I don't know how much I could trust a guy named Art Arthur, but I take your point. Here's another aspect to all of this. The Democrats, well, Jeff, earlier in your answer, you said something like illegal immigration or some normal American U.S. phrase, but just saying that for too long would get you essentially run out of the party. And the New York Times had an article about the Democrats' ongoing struggle with how to not just message, but how to actually legislate. And they quote Representative Ayanna Pressley, right there from Boston, Carine. Democrats have to stop talking about the issue of immigration within a Republican frame. This has nothing to do with law and order. This is about power control, terror, and it is about racism and xenophobia. Donald Trump wants to make America Jim Crow again and then some. I mean, maybe he does, but if that's your policy plank, is there this middle ground, this elusive middle ground we've been grasping for?
Well, there is the middle ground. It's just, will anybody seize it? I mean, are these our choices? Ayanna Pressley and Stephen Miller? What's behind door number 3? I can tell you right now, I'm taking door number 3 no matter what's behind it.
Is this an Elon Musk third party segue? Is that where we're going with this?
Yeah, that's why I'm here to stump for the America Party. You got me, Mike. I didn't think my agenda would be uncovered this early in the episode, but here we are.
The mask has slipped and the agenda is showing.
Here's the thing, though. Your options are not Ayanna Pressley and Stephen Miller. You noticed that I said illegal immigration. It didn't even register that I said it.
Right,
you're right that in
it's
some
normal
quarters,
way to talk.
So that's the thing, and I'm on the left, and I've voted for Democrats in every election I've ever voted in, which is all of them. And but I'm also a writer. I was a speechwriter for a long time, and now I've been a political comedy writer for a long time. And I feel pretty strongly that you just need to talk the way people talk. The point of words is to communicate. And undocumented immigrant is not a phrase that people use. It's not, You have to be really well steeped in those certain circles where that's the preferred term to know to say that, and everyone else says illegal immigration. And I actually start to think that more Democrats are coming around to where I am and realizing, like, oh yeah, let's stop sounding like robots.
But is there really a third way? We'd like to think there was a third way. Just like with Doge cuts, we'd like to think, well, you could cut some of the waste without going all chainsaw. But can we? And if so, why don't we? We've had decades to have a politics that showed something like the third way, and it doesn't seem to present itself.
On immigration?
So many issues go ahead.
Well, on immigration, let me offer a radical idea, which would be a modern immigration system that meets our needs. One of the reasons so many people come here legally is because our system is too cumbersome and too restrictive, and they come here illegally because they can't come here legally. This is something I write about sometimes, and I've got a really broad readership, people from all over points on the political spectrum, but people on the right often get mad at me when I say some version of people are just going to come. If there is this big of a mismatch between how many workers we need, and I hate to call people workers, but it's economics that's driving it. That's why I'm saying workers. How many workers we need, roughly that many will come here. And if we restrict them, then they'll just come here illegally. And that's the reality. So a system that let the right number of people, right in terms of the labor market, in legally, would negate the illegal immigration problem, because that would be a lot less necessary. And that's the type of thing. I can give you a cynical but I think true answer as to why that's not happening, Mike. Republicans want this as an issue. It is such a huge issue for their base. It really gets them fired up, and they don't want an immigration compromise because what would Fox News talk about if it wasn't fear-mongering about illegal immigration? Obama tried this, especially at the beginning of his second term. There was a big push for a deal. They didn't want it because they want it as a campaign issue.
But at the same time, too, Democrats want it as an issue. I mean, the whole Biden border policy.
I want to hear what you had to say, but some Democrats do. Democrats like me don't, but please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there are some Republicans who can be pragmatic on immigration, but I think you're right that the party has to, the base decision that the party needs to make is if they like immigration or not. And that's a long debate in the Republican Party. I love immigration. There are a lot of conservatives who don't. That's just a conversation they need to have. But Democrats also spent the last 4 years basically assuming that anyone that wanted to come into this country illegally was coming with the right intentions. And, a lot of the people I've met have been perfectly nice, would be really productive Americans and members of our society. And to your point, they should be able to come here without expensive lawyers and documents that are impossible for anyone to understand. Like, there is a serious problem that speaks to reform. Like, that has to happen. But also bad people come in all the time. And this is this has been informing a lot of the debate in places like Massachusetts, but I'll use Massachusetts as an example because I know it best. I mean, a lot of the Trump administration's ire with Massachusetts right now is that the state does not cooperate as much when it comes to people convicted of crimes. Like it should be easier for ICE and local law enforcement to cooperate on these issues. But on both sides, there are just blanket approaches.
Yeah, there are sanctuary cities in New York. There are sanctuary cities in San Francisco. Virginia, which doesn't have them and which has Glenn Youngkin as a governor, they have proportionally a record number of deportation and ICE involvement. And Jeff, I think I want to live in the world, and it's more of an Obama world, where the majority, the mainstream of the Democratic Party has your view. And maybe the mainstream of the party did have your view in the 2020 election, but they weren't allowed to express your view. And when Joe Biden was the only one on the stage who didn't put up his hand for let's not have criminal enforcement, he got filleted and he had to do the Stations of the Cross. And there was so much messaging, and that was seen as a huge political loser. Things are changing. The Center for American Progress now has position papers emphasizing legal immigration. I'd like for that to be the case. I don't know that the counter mobilization to the very real ICE excesses is going to breathe into being a Ruben Gallego-esque Democratic Party with any ability to do anything versus an Ayanna Pressley or just a rump faction Democratic Party.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. But what if they just dialed the crazy down by 2 notches? that might happen, and it would be worth 2 notches is 2 notches. Mike, you got to give me that, right?
Well, 2 out of what? What's the scale?
1,000. Yeah.
That's
I don't know, but we all seem to have witnessed the same thing, which was a weirding of the left on this issue to where things got so accelerated that it really was open borders in all but name, at least among the rhetoric of the fringiest people you can find. And I'm probably being unfair by calling them fringy, because at times they did make their way into the mainstream. Mike, you pointed out that moment in the debate in 2020. That did happen. My point is simply that I think that wave has crested and is washing back out. Where things will end, who knows? But I guess we'll see.
Is that, I mean, you're almost demanding that I end the segment there, but I still have to ask you a question. Beautiful. Okay. Only time will also tell.
It's your podcast. Edit wherever you like.
Know. But, it's just that when you tie something up in a button and then the unbutton untire comes by, that he's not helping things.
Well, you can edit it out. If you decide it's a mistake, edit it out. I want to hear your question, though.
It's this. Will the trends of being upset, being more upset, reacting to the reaction, which I think Donald Trump definitely plays into, and this is why he put armed forces and Homeland Security in the streets in LA, because he wants that fight. Will it allow a dialing down of the crazy of 2 notches or a finding of new forms of crazy? I don't know how many Democrats will be able to get elected on an immigration platform of anything other than what Trump did. We're doing the opposite. I know the Center for American Progress, and it's right there in the name. They're centrist and they're into progress. I know they have constructive policy papers that would say otherwise. I just don't know where the passions of the American electorate are. What's your inclination, Carine?
I mean, it's actually where the American public is pretty simple. Americans overall like immigration. It's interesting because the way that they felt about immigration generally actually went down during the Biden administration, when immigration was equated with chaos. Now, sort of a similar issue is happening where they're squeamish with collateral arrest, like we talked about. But overall, Americans seem to be amenable to more legal immigration, making that system easier. And the vast majority want criminals to be deported. Now, I think some of the really performative, both from the right and from the left, is not helping anyone. But I've been focusing on some of the protests in particular on the left. And when you go to these, I went to an anti-ICE protest in Lower Manhattan. And it's everyone with keffiyehs, and at the center, you'd think you'd walk there and you'd see, I don't know, Latin American flags, but the first thing you saw was a Palestinian flag right at the center of the protest. And when you associate, being against ICE deporting members of families and putting the faces of 18-year-olds who have been deported on their way to school, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that strikes me as a movement that could really get at the sympathy of people. But then when this becomes just like part of a whole progressive movement on Israel, Palestine, and when you have like truly violent protests in LA, I don't see that as effective messaging from the left or like trying to work at a solution. And my guess is that a lot of moderate Democrats who understand that immigration laws, until there's reform, need to like somewhat be enforced, they're probably annoyed by it as well.
Well, I got the Palestinian flag. Lots of people jumping the wall from Jenin. That's what's going on. Well, so the last thing is what we started off with was this concern among, I quoted very well-respected political scientist from Harvard and a guy from the Bulwark, and I could quote Damon Linker, who's a real centrist who I follow, and they're worried. They're worried that $30 billion towards ICE's enforcement and deportation operations and increasing the annual budget threefold will give Trump some sort of shock troops, which again doesn't argue for the or for the two-notch down hopefulness. Are you worried about that, Jeff?
I thought the two notches were about what might happen on the left. I think on the left, people are mostly realizing that what the trend of 2020 didn't end up well. On the right,
but that's what I'm talking about too. They're so worried about Trump having shock troops they have to counter-mobilize. Everyone I'm talking about is roughly anti-Trump, if not the left.
God, is this where we are, mobilizing troops, metaphorically, but I guess with ICE being armed to the teeth somewhat literally? I hope it doesn't come to that Trump turns ICE into some horrible enforcement force, and then that would be a bad start. And then the bad reaction to that would be for the left to say, well, then we need an equal and opposite, equally horrible and equally stupid opposite reaction, which I guess would be to I will not only have open borders, but I guess buy everyone in the world a plane ticket to come here. How could we get more stupid? Whatever that thing is, I'm sure Ayanna Pressley will find it. But I hope that's not where we end up.
All right. Well, the one silver lining is at those rallies for immigration / free Palestine, you see many fewer free Mumia signs. So I don't know. He hasn't been freed. I don't know what happened.
Is he still alive?
He is.
Free Mumia was a thing when I was in college, and that was not recently.
Did it work? Do you know who
I
Mumia
thought
is?
Maybe he was free, and you're telling me that he's not and he's still alive. So, but maybe one more protest and they'll free him.
Do you know who he is, Carine?
I don't. I was just about to ask.
You know what? I'll send you the Wikipedia page. Possibly shot a Philadelphia police officer, but possibly also a freedom fighter. All right. In a second, we will talk about another icon of freedom, Vladimir Putin, and what Donald Trump's ongoing and evolving relationship to the man is. We'll be back with more of Not Even Mad. All right, we're back now with Not Even Mad, and we were just talking during the break, I swear, we're not even mad. We are Carine Hajjar and Jeffrey Maurer, and I'll start with a quote. See who said it. "We get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin," he said during a cabinet meeting. Okay, it was Trump, adding that the Russian leader was, quote, nice, but a lot of what he said turns out to be meaningless. I would say that's essentially backwards. The Russian president is not nice, but he says a lot of meaningful things like, I intend to attack Ukraine. This is reporting in the Wall Street Journal. The approach appears to be faltering. Trump critical. This is Putin's approach. Trump critical of continued Russian airstrikes says he plans to resume arms shipments to Kyiv. He is considering sending an additional Patriot air defense system to Ukraine, the Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday. So what I want to know is really not has Donald Trump played this right, but is Putin continue to play Donald Trump like whatever the Russian version of a fiddle is? It's probably a fiddle. They're very good at classical music. Yeah, okay, go with that, Jeff.
Right. Okay.
Has he played him? Has he played him like one of those?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I, like many people, have been baffled by Trump's love for Putin and what he's doing. Even now when you're quoting that Wall Street Journal article, which I thought was a lot of good news in there. It's like, finally, maybe he's kind of starting to see Putin for who he is. He still felt the need to call him nice, which is such a funny word. I think even people who, like Putin, respect Putin, admire him, are inspired by him. Nice, I don't think, is a word they would go to.
Right. When Dmitry Peskov comes to Putin with the list of adjectives, this is what we're going with. He crosses out nice. It's like, no, you're not calling me that in public.
It makes me picture Putin in like a robin's egg blue cardigan sweater, and just like playing with some preschoolers. Just like a nice guy. Just what a nice dude. But yes, I think Putin has manipulated Trump. Or something's going on. I don't know why Trump has been so obsequious to Russia. The thing I wrote about this week is like, maybe he just really wants to win a Nobel Prize, and he thinks if he can pressure Ukraine into quitting, he'll get a Nobel Prize. I don't know. But that Wall Street Journal article was encouraging, because it looks like maybe he's starting to realize, hang on, Putin is not the good guy.
Yeah. I don't know.
He's nice, though. Got to give him that. He's very nice. But
Carine, you think that realization is dawning on Trump, or do you think that he's getting embarrassed by Putin not doing what Trump wants?
Both. Well, I think Trump when I hear him call Putin nice, I hear him thinking this is a business negotiation. Sure. And if you schmooze the guy and give him a nice dinner at Mar-a-Lago, then he'll shake your hand and end the war. But to Jeff's point, I take Putin exactly what he says. I'm gonna believe it. He's doing exactly what he said he was gonna do. Two things. I think one, Trump is now waking up to the fact that you have to hold your red lines. You have to he's waking up to the fact that the business schmoozing is just not going to work here. It's also, he's probably embarrassed, and I think it's embarrassing that the White House was not notified that we shut off shipments, or what was it, last week, weapon shipments to Ukraine. It's all disorder sort of everywhere you look. Yeah.
Hegseth decides one thing, and then he goes back on what Hegseth says, and it's unclear if they even knew what Hegseth knew what Trump was saying, but if Trump even knew that the shipments were stopped, yep.
But the other thing, too, is, there is a part, again, Trump was really good at coalition building, and this sort of applies to all of the conflicts in the Republican Party right now. He built it, but the problem is, if you're too good at coalition building, then you have a party full of people who disagree with each other. And there are a lot of voices in the Republican Party right now that just don't want to help Ukraine. And there are a lot of voices that really, really do. It'll be interesting to see where Trump falls. But as somebody who would like to see Ukraine not fully invaded and absorbed, I think it's good that Trump's sort of waking up to the fact that Putin is really not his friend in these negotiations. And if he has to go out and call him nice, but behind the scenes is sending more weapons to Ukraine, I'm fine with that.
I think Trump is very bad at negotiating with adversaries. He's not terrible at negotiating with people who are friends to begin with, because when he negotiates with business partners who wouldn't mind if Donald Trump came out of the deal okay, he is quite willing to violate all sorts of norms and all sorts of protocols and really make the other guy squirm and suffer. Now, I have to say, it's not as if Democrats and the Biden administration are good at this either. A good example is recently Trump, he didn't get NATO to agree to spend more than 5% on defense. But essentially, this is how it shook out. And it was because of Putin's excesses and adventurism in Ukraine. But the Biden administration would go there. Gideon Rose of the Council of Foreign Relations had a really good quote in a New Yorker piece where he said the Biden administration would go there and talk to people whose opinions they really valued and say, please give more money for defense. And they would never do it. And then the Trump administration sent J.D. Vance and said, you people are all terrible. We hate you. We have no shared values and you better do this. And NATO hated J.D. Vance, but they did it also because Putin was invading Ukraine. But my general point is he's very bad at negotiations, I think, with real adversaries. His negotiation with Kim Jong-un went nowhere. His negotiation with Iran went nowhere as a negotiation. As a bombing, it seemed to have gone okay. And his negotiation with Putin...
That's a bit of a cheat if you can interrupt the negotiation with an airstrike.
It is true. It is a get out of negotiation free card. But I don't think he has any skill at this. And I don't even know if he wants anything other than someone to say, good job, you somehow get a medal, which is, I don't know how tongue in cheek it was. I think you actually believe that's what he wants, right, Jeff?
I think it's in the mix, potentially. I struggle to understand why any American president would look at what's going on in Ukraine and think, I can't tell who's the good guy and who's the bad guy here. How do you explain that? So I'm grasping for explanations. I'm trying to not be a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy
Well, okay,
theorist.
let's do this. Rank the plausibility of the following explanations. One, he's a Russian stooge. Two, he has this Nobel tropism. Three, he's just bad at negotiations and is getting played.
Okay. I would rank them one and two, but then three doesn't quite make sense to me because just what's his goal in this negotiation? Because what I don't understand is that his goal does not seem to be to get Putin out of Ukraine. I don't know what his goal is.
His goal is to stop. His goal is to stop the war, and he doesn't care at what point, like at any what cost? The borders are going to be.
Okay,
that's what I think his goal is. No war, no killing.
Okay, yeah. Well, then why does he care? Why does he care?
Goes back to the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Or goes back to the campaign promise, or goes back to
1 and 2, right? Yeah.
And then there's also a minerals deal or things that he thinks he could get out of the United States. But what he really doesn't do, that's the question. Why does he care? He does not care at all for the things that the other presidents before him have cared about. And this is not soapboxy, but it's just an analysis. We just take it for granted that, of course, you got to stop aggressions of our enemies. Of course, you got to protect our friends. And then you want to throw in there something pro-democracy, something they oppress people that we wouldn't. Yeah, that's all gravy. And Trump doesn't have that orientation at all. And I think his people like that.
Well, he does on Iran, which is interesting. I really think this does come down to like the composition of the administration. Like the people, a lot of the voices on Russia are like, there are a lot of pro-Ukraine voices in the Republican Party, but there are a lot of Putin sympathists. But on Iran, the Republican Party takes Iran at its word and holds them to it. And Trump has been pretty good at holding his red lines, like with the strike on Qasem Soleimani in the first admin with maximum pressure. And now he's doing exactly as he said he would if they didn't cooperate. I think that's strong foreign policy right there with Russia for what it's. I think like the real question for Republicans is why are they not taking Putin at his word?
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about that and just situate yourself. I know you always write about right of center things, and I think that's your orientation, but were you once a Republican? Are you a Republican? Are you just a Republican whisperer with right-leaning inclinations? Where would you put yourself for the purposes of this next question? Yeah.
I'd say I would first and foremost identify as a conservative. Even what that means today is sort of up for grabs, but your classic, as you will hear in your classic poli-sci conversations, the annoying classical liberal. Unfortunately, that's the best I can do at this. I think that's the easiest way to identify myself. But yeah, I mean, I think I align more with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. But right now, a lot of, especially on foreign policy, a lot of domestic issues there have some gripes.
And where are you with Where are you with comfort of use of force when necessary? You got to say that. Who wants use of force when unnecessary? But where are you with use of force when necessary versus not our fight, shouldn't be our treasure? The isolationist versus the peace through strength faction.
I'm definitely not an isolationist. And that's this has been one of my bigger fears. When I talk about gripes with the Republican Party, this is one of my biggest fears with the Republican Party. But I think it's not like I just revel in the bombing of Iran. I don't love when we have to use force, but I think it should always be on the table with adversaries, because the minute you take that off the table, they sort of run amok. And we saw this with Biden. Iran took him for granted, or took advantage of him on everything. We were at the point in the Biden administration where taking the IRGC that has been responsible for hundreds of American deaths, we're going to take them off the FTO list. Meanwhile, there are assassins trying to kill the current president of the United States and other high-ranking officials. I mean, it was ludicrous what we were willing to let them get away with, and basically sending the message that at the end of the day, we're not going to do anything to hold you accountable. So I think it's a good thing that Trump is holding. Like, if you have a red line, you need to hold that red line. But that being said, it's not ideal that we're getting into these sort of war situations. Like, I don't think it should be the end goal, but it has to be a deterrent.
Right. And so, but just to be fair to the Iranian assassins, they were very bad at it. So
yeah.
I just want to put that out there.
They were really bad at it.
Yeah, they're terrible. Okay, so this is all to say, can you help me? I honestly don't know. I perceive there is a real difference of opinion among maybe the isolationists or those who would be isolationists when it comes to Iran versus Russia. I think there was a much greater willingness to be harsh, not even to attack. No one's talking about bombing Russia, but the animosity towards Iran was 2 or 3 times greater than it is with Russia. And is this what? Healthy fear of a nuclear state? Maybe something having to do with Slavs and race? The religion of each? Why is there such a difference? Am I right about that?
I think you're right, but I think actually the difference is shrinking. I made a quiz for the Globe Opinion newsletter, and it was basically just who said it, Rashida Tlaib or Tucker Carlson, like Matt Walsh or Bernie Sanders, and you truly could not tell. So on Iran, and this was about Iran in particular, like there were growing voices on the right that were really upset with the Trump administration over these strikes. I think like in the admin, you have a lot of it comes down to staffing. There are a lot of Iran hawks in this administration, and they've held the line on Iran.
Who said it, Jeff? A real white man doesn't fight like that. Rashida Tlaib or Tucker Carlson?
Rashida Tlaib.
No. I'm sorry. The exact quote is, "It's not how white men fight." But you want to take off any bite of that?
No, I look, I spend so much time dealing with factional fights in the Democratic Party that I'm happy to see the Republicans have to deal with their own factional fight. Oh, good. It's not just us that deals with this. I'll let them sort that out.
Well, let me ask you this. I don't know, what's your ideal? And Carine said, it's not great that we have to do this. Of course, a world without Ayatollahs, world without Vladimir Putining things up would be better. Yeah, but what's your ideal posture for Democrats, a coalition of Democrats and Republicans with Ukraine?
With Ukraine?
Yeah, as it comes to Ukraine, funding Ukraine, military in Ukraine.
I think
effective negotiation for Ukraine.
I think what's outstanding about what's going on in Ukraine is that the Ukrainians are fighting and they're doing an outstanding job. And if you think of all the times in American history when we have thought, boy, this conflict in which we are not a combatant, but we do have a vested interest. We really would hope it would go a certain way, and then it doesn't go that way. But the Ukrainians, against all expectations, are fighting this war, and they are fighting a country with, is it 4 times their population? It's several times. I think it's 4. It's several times their population. They're fighting them to a draw, and they're doing it through great loss of life. And through great suffering on their part. It's been inspiring, I think. And what do we get from this? Well, we get one of our biggest adversaries stuck in the mud in a foreign country. We get the international system that has done so well for the United States upheld, not smashed to smithereens. It still exists. And if you care about things like people not getting invaded by a foreign power and having a foreign army march in and say, you're part of our country now. Well, you get that too. And we get it for unbelievably cheap in the grand scheme of things because we're not, no American soldiers are dying. No Americans are fighting. No Americans are dying. It's, we're spending some money, but we're also, because it's this thing where they get munitions we already have, and then we commission, new weapons. We're basically giving them our old clothes, and we're going out and buying new ones. It's not as much money as it could be. So, in my opinion, the bang for the buck funding Ukraine is just unbelievable. It's just a total no-brainer, and we've done it some, and I think we should do it more. And Carine is right that there are Republicans who look at this and think, boy, that is a good deal. That is a good bargain. We are getting a lot for a little, and we should continue doing that. I just wish there were more Republicans like that, and I wish the president was one of them.
Yeah. You know, Jeff, I like you because you're funny, but it turns out you're also smart. I agreed with almost everything. I think maybe everything you said, except maybe the 4 times the population figure. After the war, it's now 3.99. And it does seem the whole deal about
surprised by that.
Yeah, and it does seem about the whole deal about
Maurer. I had been told that you are thick between the ears, but I guess it's not entirely true.
I thought your seltzer placement in your clownish antics was enough, but it turns out you were making a serious point. And also, of course, when you give someone your old clothes, you would hope that your current outfits wouldn't slip off the deck of an aircraft carrier. So that is also going on. And there's an interesting thing there. I understand that we, the United States, did actively engage with Iran, and we're not actively engaging with Ukraine. But the very same sort of person or exact person that was unbelievably worried, in fact, was assured at the gravitational pull of being involved in bombing Ukraine, that this would, of course, lead to another sluggish war in the Middle East. That exact person in the Democratic Party was also the same person who never thought that that would happen in Ukraine. It's Tucker Carlson, who wasn't against Iran, I'll say that. But I mean, he wasn't against the bombing of Iran. It's Tucker Carlson and others on the right. They seem to be the only ones saying we're going to get sucked into a war of great powers in Russia. The same is not, I understand there are differences, that it was a B-2 bomber and it's just our F-16 fighters, second generation, that we're giving to the Russians. But it seems more
Ukrainians.
Similar than not to assure a public that this can only lead to a morass and to a quagmire. And I think that's a little intellectually inconsistent. Or am I kind of glossing over the huge differences between direct involvement and arming a friend? Carine.
I mean, I just think that there are a lot of loud alarmist voices on the right now about any type of conflict. But at the end of the day, like, I'm of the school of thought that if you don't deter, I mean, like, there are a lot of Republicans right now who genuinely think, like, we can turn inwardly and we can work on all of our own problems and nobody else is going to bug us and nobody else is going to do anything that threatens us. And meanwhile, we have our adversaries speaking loud and clear about, and very graphically, if you're talking about the Iranian military and supreme leader, about how they are going to bring us grave harm. And so I think it's, it's funny because you're seeing there are Republicans that have really held the line on that and who take our adversaries seriously. And I think, like, you see that most clearly on how we're dealing with Iran. But it does seem like Trump is sort of waking up to that with Putin again. I mean, like, I think he realizes that you cannot schmooze him out of a war and you don't just call him nice and get your Nobel Peace Prize. So hopefully I just hope this is a reckoning point for Trump on Russia.
Yeah. Well, Steve Witkoff, he will deliver. I think his.
Can I ask?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I don't mean to hijack the podcast, Mike, but did either of you see that video that Tulsi Gabbard made about nuclear annihilation? And did you see that?
Yeah.
No, tell me.
Carine did. Carine, do you want to describe it or should I?
I watched it many times. I want to hear you describe it. You'll do a funnier job than I will.
Okay, but I can see in your eyes that it made an impact on you. So, and if you watched it several times, it registered. Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard, our distinguished director of national intelligence, as we all knew she would be one day, went to Japan and discovered that apparently getting a nuclear bomb dropped on you is bad. So she made a YouTube video to alert the world of this. And Carine, I'd be interested to hear what you thought. I struck this as the not so subtle Russian talking point of, hey, leave us alone in Ukraine, because, if this goes badly, it could go nuclear, and that's not going to be good for you. Because there was this elaborate discussion of how it would all go down in the United States. Again, we're having it be explained to us like, I guess if a nuclear bomb was dropped on me, it would be bad. It was not the most essential information, which makes me wonder, okay, then what's being done in this video? I think what's being done is we're being threatened. Our director of national intelligence, who I'll go ahead and sound like a conspiracy theorist, I'm not afraid to. They got something on Tulsi, okay? I have no proof, blah, 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 lawyers, whatever. They got something on Tulsi. So this is them putting their message through Tulsi, hey, leave us alone, because it could go nuclear and that could be real bad. Did you pick that up as well, Carine?
I think so.
Was she giving that? I'm the host now. Was that what she was giving?
I think the first thing that it was giving is you're sort of undermining. I mean, this is the director of national intelligence. This is not like a Daily Wire show where you can say and she's putting out what she's doing is putting out foreign policy.
This is not Louder with Crowder or Mostly with Tulsi. Exactly.
You're right, Carine, that I did not even begin to scratch the surface with all the ways that this is weird. But that's one of them.
I think it's weird. And I think it speaks to, again, we're talking about Hegseth stopping weapon shipments to Ukraine. This is disorderly. She should not be just at the most basic level, should not be speaking about nuclear weapons. But at the strategic level, nuclear weapons exist now. And us stepping back and saying, well, let's let maybe Russia or Iran could drop a nuke, but the best thing to do would be to let them take over their regions and get as much power and people and economic windfall from that as possible. And they still are going to have nuclear weapons. So it's not a cogent strategy whatsoever. We should be speaking strength and maintaining strength and making it clear to them that there are consequences for crossing red lines, not telling them, we hate nuclear weapons, so go ahead and do whatever you want in Ukraine. I mean, it's absurd.
So in a second, we will move on to our goat grinders. But first, only for the Not Even Mad specific feed, you don't got to pay extra. I just want you in that feed too. I'm going to ask a totally unexpected question about, well, I'll tell you what it's going to be about to my guests. It's the one thing that you have to ask every political pundits, would-be political pundits, talkers about. His name is Zoran. His last name is Mamdani. I know you're both captivated by the gentleman, but Jeff, does his suggest change everything or just everything forever?
That reminds me of when Colbert would ask people, George W. Bush, great president or the greatest president? It's that type of question. I'm glad that we did get around to talking about Zoran, because you're right, you would not have been in FCC compliance had we not talked about him on this podcast. So box checked. So much is being made of this. He won a primary in New York, a Democratic primary in New York City against a guy who is, as I phrased it in one of my articles, a mediocre pervert, where mediocre refers to his character as a person, not his resume as a pervert, right?
Yeah.
So and people are like, oh, the revolution has arrived. Has it? Or did he? Also, his ranked choice. Let me add that. So that kind of plays into the in the hands of a dark horse like Zoran. So yeah, that's what happened. And I find is this the future of the Democratic Party takes more than a little ridiculous? Now, maybe that's just hopeful thinking, because boy, I hope that's not the future of the Democratic Party, both as somebody who likes good ideas and doesn't like bad ideas. And boy, Zoran is a bad idea factory. And as someone who would like to see Democrats win outside of Manhattan, or I should say inner Brooklyn, which is where Zoran's power base was. I really hope he's not the future of the Democratic Party. So I maybe that's wishful thinking on my part, but when I take a step back, it's one primary in one deep blue city. He beat Andrew Cuomo. Big deal.
You don't think Bushwick residents are the key to winning a general election?
As goes Red Hook, so goes Midwood.
The Bushwick Dumbo corridor, I don't think is where most is similar to America in many respects.
But he is a bad idea or not. Yeah, I'll say yeah. He is a factory, and this addresses our abundance concern. And I'm not being glib. I'm saying he is putting out something to latch onto, and not just youthfulness and a really good color scheme. Like
he got talked around to some not dumb YIMBY positions, which is good. But his first idea was rent control. So apparently somebody sat him down and said, "All right, so that's the worst idea anyone's ever had." Except maybe your public grocery stores is a candidate for that title. So get smart. And he got some religion at the end of the campaign. So he did do that.
But what about youthfulness, Carine? What about vigor? What about the fact that he's not sepulchral like Andrew Cuomo?
Yeah, I actually think there are things to learn from this for Democrats to take away from this emphasis on youthful. None of his ideas are good. Again, like Bushwick is not how you win the rest of the country. It's stunning to me that you have big names coming out and congratulating him. And I'm pretty sure he's meeting with Hakeem Jeffries this week. I mean, this is exactly what Americans said they didn't like. I mean, this is why we have Trump again, right? It's mind-boggling how many people are reaching out and congratulating him. And I am kind of pessimistic because when we're talking about how much Democrats take from this, because you have a Democratic Party that really, really tried to they went like halfway on these ideas, not fully, but enough to be like incredibly annoying with progressive talking points. And
enough for it to come back to haunt Kamala Harris, certainly that much. Yeah.
Exactly. And now they're looking at some guy going full on and saying, well, thank God it actually does work. I'm pretty pessimistic. Plus, as the daughter of a Venezuelan immigrant, the sound of public grocery stores did give me hives.
You could suddenly picture the toilet paper hoarding when you hear that phrase, right? Yeah.
Well, the hives are literally on sale in Venezuela grocery stores. You could cultivate the honey yourself, and good luck with them. But okay. I would just say that everything of the style of Zoran is next level. Yeah. I was not making a joke when I talked about his color scheme. The, ochre lettering and the backdrops in the, what was it, an umber. It was fantastic. And how he's always talking to camera at just below eye level, and the suits and the iconography and the smiles. And here's a guy whose ideas not only don't appeal to me and I think will fail, at least one or two of the ideas, like not rebutting globalize the intifada, scare people I know. Let's just say that. And I still kind of think he's a nice guy. He might be a nice guy. I think I'd like to be friends with him. And I do think that 30 years ago, he wouldn't have been able to break through. And ideas-wise, that's a bad thing. But other aspects, is it just style-wise? It's demographic-wise. It's age-wise. Those are good things. Experience-wise, probably not a good thing. I don't know. It is. I don't know if some brilliant moderate, doesn't have to be moderate, but person with plausible ideas in the Democratic Party, which still is my party, could take advantage of this. I think that it's somehow tied into the aspiration of the socialist ideas that won't work. They're so inextricably intertwined. You can't have the moderate version of Zoran, but I'd like to think about how to possibly achieve that.
Well, let me throw this out there. Is Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez not the moderate Zohan? I mean, maybe she didn't have. Yeah,
she has a collection of opinions that are immoderate, and I want to. And I want to keep. I want to keep my washing machine for 80 years, and she's got a collection of those. I could see her defecting to Republicans.
There are a number of moderates. I mean, I take your point with Zohan, right? Like, would I rather have a youthful candidate or a decrepit candidate? Youthful. Would I rather have a charismatic candidate or a plank of wood? Charismatic. Yeah, I get it. And you're right. Like, he seems like he's done some cringe stuff, but he's one of these people, like, if I knew him personally, I feel like, yeah, he's cool. Don't talk politics with him, and he's totally cool. He's a good hang if you don't talk politics. I can see that.
Or obelize the Grintifada, Ixe.
Right. And, yeah. Anyway, campaigns, like, it's occurred to them, like, hey, let's be cool. Like, people have thought of that before. Hey, let's get the youth vote. People have thought of that before. It's just not so easy to snap your fingers and make it happen. Look, if he does have things that are transferable to other campaigns, if it really is ochre lettering, if that's what America wanted, and any candidate who picks up that particular hue combined with the right font will be writing a groundswell of popular support into office, that, okay, yeah, great. Then, yes, give it to candidates who can win in Nebraska. But I suspect what happened with Zoran might have been specific to that time and place, which is, once again, New York running against a possible sex offender.
Yes. And to be clear, it doesn't have to be ochre lettering, but this was inspired by bodega fonts and a little Coney Island. So whatever is specific to your neck of the woods. Last question before we get into those annoying things. And somehow Zoran Mamdani's not. But Carine, speak for all the youth. Have you seen the chart of turnout? It's never been like this before. It peaks at 18 and goes down and comes up a little bit of bump in the people who always vote, and then declines with the aged. All things being equal, which they're not, this is a good thing, right? Is there an angle? Speak to all youth.
Hang on.
Be the voice of youth.
Mike, let me jump in. And of course, I want to hear Carine's answer. But just, are you working off the new data? Because this data came out, and then they had to correct it a couple days later and say, wait, hang on. It was just a fat finger data error where the turnout between 18, yes, the turnout to 18 to 24. He did well with young people. But
okay.
I wonder if you're looking at the first version, which did make people's eyes bulge out of their heads because they went, oh my God, he killed it with the 18 to 24. And then a couple days later, they said, that was not supposed to be an 8. That was supposed to be a 3. Our apologies.
Okay. So I will possibly stand corrected. But in general, is there any fountain of youth to be found, gleaned, or sipped from with Mr. Mamdani?
I mean, I think actually the key, putting aside, I think we all agree this campaign was run with remarkable charisma, and whoever his social media intern is, both parties should be trying to hire her on a 7-figure salary. Like she or he did an amazing job. I mean, and that's how a lot of my friends started catching on. Like a lot of my friends in New York started catching on to his campaign. A mayoral primary is not exactly like the most glamorous thing you want to be doing. But I was surprised just anecdotally by how many of my friends were like posting and animated by it, dismayed by those that like were buying these ideas about public grocery stores. But nonetheless, they were like really engaged. And what he did is pretty similar to what Trump did and how Trump did really well with especially young men. They both talked to social media influencers and just like went on different channels that the people they were going after pay attention to. So like, I think it was brilliant of Mamdani to go on. I don't remember the influencer's name, but he like sits with a Metro card and a microphone and goes around and talks to people on the subway. And they had like a really informative and interesting conversation. And like literally when I'm riding the subway, you can see people like scrolling through the reels and he is popping up in all of them. Trump went on with like, I doubt that any political strategist would ever say, you should go on the Nelk Boys YouTube channel. But like the fact that he was willing to do that, I mean, it was like, I think that both parties need to wake up to the fact that people are digesting information differently. And you have to engage with them.
Yes, I believe that Subway show is the Regis Philbin Subway Hour with Joey Bishop. No, it's Subway Takes. Yes, I know that show. All right, now we come to the time where we talk about things that annoy us, since mostly it was things like Vladimir Putin, ICE crackdown, Zoran Mamdani's font, things that thrilled us. Who wants to go first? Who wants to bring a goat grinder to the table? Jeff, you have one?
I'll take this one, sure.
All right.
And it's, I know people have heard this a lot of other places before, but sawdust, and specifically our national sawdust dialogue, is annoying me a lot. People who listen to my podcast and read my blog know that the thing I do with my spare time is renovations. I have recently bought the worst house in Maryland, and I am renovating it, and I am presently redoing the floors. And there's a lot to know about that, and I've done it before, but I got to check in with YouTube videos and everything. And everything you see on that has anything to do with sawdust creation, of course, sanding a floor does a lot of that. The warnings about explosive sawdust, they warn you every 30 seconds. Be aware, sawdust can spontaneously combust. They're not warning you of it being a fire hazard, which obviously it is because it's ground up trees at the end of the day. But they're saying it can spontaneously combust, which of course it can, but it can under the most uncommon extreme circumstances. You typically have to have a lot of it. Like this happens in sawmills and places like that. And under extreme temperatures and if you have a lot of moisture, microbes can grow and create a chemical reaction. So yes, it can just combust, but they make it sound like you have a little bit of sawdust. Get away from it. Run. It's like a grenade with no pin in it. It's going to blow any minute now. And it's annoying. It's not just annoying, but there's something to this. Because I feel that we're so used to just getting these warnings these lawyer-driven warnings about the worst thing that could happen is just keeping us from communicating in a real way about information you need to know. Because a sane way to say that would be, something similar to what I just said. It's like, look, yes, sawdust can spontaneously combust, but you typically have to have an enormous amount in really specific conditions. But if you wanted to say that, the lawyer for Home Depot or would run in the room and go, no, you have to make them afraid at all times. They have to be terrified of sawdust. And I think that just makes our lives more opaque and more annoying in a whole lot of ways. And I wish we could just talk to each other like humans.
Yeah. Similarly, the Nagliera fowleri, which is that tiny amoeba that could get in your nose if you live in a rural area.
Yeah.
So if you do nasal irrigation, you're advised to use distilled water because in 1999, a lady in North Carolina did die. My wife is terribly, terribly afraid, and I try to tell her the statistics.
Yeah.
She won't listen.
Or
distilled water only.
I hope I'm not getting too blue for the podcast here. Or that little fish that can swim up your dick hole. I have heard so much about that little fish that can swim up your dick hole. I was in Peace Corps, and they never stopped talking about that little fish that can swim up your dick hole. I don't know. Did it ever happen? Thankfully, it didn't happen to me. But it did happen to me because I was terrified to go in the water the entire time because of that goddamn fish.
Yeah,
and everyone else was or should have been, even though I don't even know if that's real. But you hear about it.
Meanwhile, where you were based in Djibouti, sawdust explosions left and right.
Yeah. Not enough warnings.
Carine Hajjar, what is your Go Grinder?
So it's been really hot in New York, and I keep getting emails from the energy provider or whatever that are saying we want everyone to stay cool. Let's prioritize the way we use our electricity. The only thing that in Lower Manhattan, basically the only thing you use your electricity on is your small window AC unit. And I keep getting angry emails about it, but Lower Manhattan is not known for accommodating energy intensive appliances in these apartments. So I am sweating and angry in New York.
That's good. May I recommend a sawdust bath?
No, Mike, it's deadly.
Wait, am I not understanding
blow
the
her
warnings?
apartment building sky high.
But the guy
The
at Home
liability
Depot
you just
said,
took
"Go
on by
ahead."
saying that.
The guy in the orange apron was like, have at it. And then here, rinse your nose out afterwards. My Go Grinder is, of course, the sugar cane toad. Cane toads, you know why they're my Go Grinder. They basically destroyed Australia. They were imported to kill a fly, but they have toxins powerful enough to kill cats, dogs, other animals.
I would argue that Australians destroyed Australia, but continue.
Yes, this was just the very vector of their destruction.
Once you got that many Australians, there's no coming back. But that's just my opinion. You go ahead.
That's why, yeah, penal colony no more. Now they've been freed to be abused by Jeff Maurer. So this is not why I'm annoyed at the cane toad. I'm annoyed at the cane toad of the lesson that it's become, or the misapplied lesson that it's become. Because enough people know about the cane toad, because I guess the Australians are doing a good job of distracting them from their inherent unworthiness as a people, and they slough it all onto the toad. But enough people know about the lesson of the cane toad, which means don't introduce a foreign being into your ecosystem, even to kill a fly. But this is wrong. This is totally wrong. The good version of this goes on all the time and shouldn't be trusted by, former penal colony residents in a backwater that was once seen as antipodal. The ash white fly. You ever hear of it? It's a scourge in Southern California in the 1990s. And no, you haven't heard of it. And that is because they found a predator, a kind of beetle type thing that eats the fly. And I'm not going to do the whole song, but it worked. It worked. And no poodles were killed in the process. So now we have a lanternfly, and there is some debate how to get rid of the lanternfly. Also some debate. We'll talk about this on the show with Sadie Dingfelder in a Is That Bullshit segment. Some debate about how bad they really are. But from what I understand, they're going to destroy a lot of wine crops. And there is some good bioengineering where they're looking to import predators for the lanternfly. And there are all these sorts of people who are saying, no, this can't work. No, you're messing with nature. Only it has worked. It has worked so many times. We don't know when it works. This is the problem with progress. When it works, we don't know about the ash white fly. And when it doesn't work, it's all cane toads killing your poodle and possibly your resident of Brisbane. All right, that is it for today's show. We're not saying we're right. We're not saying you're right, but we are saying we're not even mad. Our guests have been Jeff Maurer and Carine Hajjar. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.